Good morning, guys. This is Brent with Lykins Motorsports. This is our GT40 headed 302. This is Project Triple J or JJ Jr. Nothing has really changed that much since the last time that you saw it. I did get our oil filter nipple on here. So I took the right-handed adapter off of the engine that's made for the truck platform, and put that nipple in there so we get our Wix filter in. Oil pan is on. We put a cut plug in where the dipstick goes. For this video, we're going to just be doing more configuration work to get the engine ready for dyno. I am going to dyno it as it sits with the factory cam and everything in it. We have 3 intake manifolds coming. So I've had some heart-to-hearts with good friend and head porter Joe Crane, and we've got our plan of action laid out as far as the steps that we're going to take. We're going to dyno first with factory cam, factory cylinder heads unported. We're going to try 3 different intake manifolds, an original high output 5.0302 4-barrel intake from the early 80s, another one of those intakes that has been ported, and then a ported Performer RPM intake. So I've got a couple sets of intake gaskets on the way. Hopefully I'll just need one. I'm going to grease them up real good so I can pop the intake off and on. But we'll test all 3 of those. The next iteration will be the E303 camshaft to see how much power it adds with the intake manifold that performs the best from the first test. Then we're going to do some cam iterations, cam grinds from my own design, and then I'm going to have the heads ported, and then bring the heads back, pop it on this factory short block with the cam from my personal selection and the intake that did the best, and see how much the ported heads add. Then we may do a few more steps in there, but eventually this will be an all-out, I hesitate to say max effort, because max effort has really no ceiling on, what's doable. I'm not going to go as far as moving ports around and, offsetting the heads on the block and all that stuff. So a goal, 475 horsepower, 500 if I can pull out some really good tricks. So we'll see what we can do with a GT40 302 5-liter bottom end. So we will nowhere be near the 540 horsepower that our 311 made with the AFR heads and all that stuff, but we're gonna see what we can do. So last week popped the oil pan off, just for one, because I broke the dipstick tube and wanted to make sure that nothing fell down in the engine, but to just get a general wellness check of what was in the oil pan. It was perfectly clean. Again, this is an awesome little motor as far as a core goes. But the oil pan is back on. As far as water pump, this guy has to come off because I can't run the front ingress that's usually on the front of the engine, the serpentine belt system. I don't have any of that, so we're going to have to drive the electric or the water pump electrically. Here's the difference between the two. So with this guy, I can bolt on our little cog, electric water pump cog, and drive the water pump. So we'll get that swapped out here in a bit. I'm gonna fill the engine full of oil. So it's a 5-quart capacity system, and we're gonna prime the pump, make sure that we have good pressure on the gauge, and then I'm gonna pull some valve springs off, and we're gonna get a good accurate install height measurement. We're gonna see how the diameter of this step that's around the guide, and then get a game plan going for some valve springs, because I do want to change valve springs before we start all this camshaft stuff. I don't want to have to do that again later on down the road. So we'll get everything up to snuff there. So let's get right to it. We're going to put 5 quarts of oil in this thing, and then get a priming tool and see what we got. This is one of those times where I'm wondering if I left the plug in the pan. I'm pretty sure I did. We'll find out shortly. I'm using some Lykins break-in oil, some 520. My feet aren't wet, so I think we're going to be in good shape. Alright. Next, we're going to back this oil pressure sensor out of the block. Then screw in our gauge fitting for our analog oil pressure gauge. All right, I'm gonna get you up here where you can see. Well, it looks like 60 pounds is all she wrote. I think that's about normal for just a standard volume, standard pressure pump. We're not going to be turning any RPMs. Even if we turn 6,000, we should be in good shape. If in the event that it dips down, we can always add a little heavier weight oil. But I think we're in good shape as far as that goes, and everything looks healthy. I was getting a lot of oil out of the lifters. None of them are collapsing, so that's good. I'm pushing down pretty good on these guys. So if I were to push down and feel the lifter plunger go out from underneath me, then that would mean that I would need to replace those lifters. I think these are going to be in good shape for what we're doing. All right, next step is to get this old ratty water pump off. So Fords have about 37 different bolts holding it to the timing cover. Never really understood that, but so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I can't remember if I counted that one or not. So 9 or 10 bolts holding it on, which is pretty much ridiculous. And then you have the small block Chevrolet on the other hand that holds an entire valve cover on with just 4 bolts. So I don't know what these guys were thinking, but they were thinking something, just not the right thing. All right, so let's get this pump off. Alright, I got some scraping to do, but I'm going to have to leave you guys for a little while. Got my FAA medical scheduled for 11 o'clock this morning, so need to go get that taken care of, and then I'll be back. Wish me luck, and I'll see you soon. Alright, I got the gasket surface cleaned off as about as good as I can get. I used a little roll-lock disc, a little soft roll-lock disc to scrape it clean. Put a little dab of silicone on here to help us with any imperfections. Oh, I'm back, by the way. It helps the gasket stick as well. Go back with a little layer. Alright, so we got that bolted back on. How does that look? Filthy, rusty, nasty engine, beautiful new water pump. Alright, so before we tackle the valve springs, I got our MSD distributor, and what I'll do with that is pull the weights and the bushing out and lock that thing down. I don't really care anything about initial and advance. I just want it to stay the same all the time. So we'll do that real quick and then get on to looking at our valve springs. All right, so we're on to the next step, and I've got this number 5 piston at top dead center, and it's interesting to see when I was looking through the spark plug holes that you can still see the crosshatch on the cylinders. So we are, I know I've been saying it a lot during this build, but we are in pretty good shape so far. Got a couple of springs off. These just little single springs, no damper, no nothing. And these big fat retainers that weigh about 17 pounds a piece. So what we're going to do now, I'm just going to get, and you can see the difference between where the locks go. So very far down the tip, from the tip on the exhaust side, not so far down from the intake side, but it's going to prove to be a little difficult to get some good springs, but I'm pretty confident that we'll find some. I'm going to measure this step and get a measurement on that. Then I'll use just a plain 10-degree retainer and a pair of standard locks to see where we are. Alright, so I'm just going to take some calipers, get a measurement here best I can. We're at well, just a few thousandths away from an inch. So whatever our spring ID is, it's going to have to be greater than an inch, and I'll record that dimension, and then we'll hop on to our installed height. So just a couple of quick notes before we get into our install height measurements. This step right here, I know I just mentioned that. When you guys call in and email in and say, I want a cam, I want a hydraulic roller, to a lot of you guys with factory heads, I'm usually saying you need to watch out for this step. You need to have it cut down. And this is the reason. So if we look at a modern spring locator, so you're not always going to find a spring to fit around this, and most likely than not, you're not going to find a spring on an FE or something like that that will handle the spring loads and everything that you need, that will just by chance fit around this step. Most springs require a locator, so gives the inside diameter of the spring something to locate on. You can see the difference between those two things. As I drop it on the floor, it bounces and rolls everywhere. So you're not able to put that locator on, obviously, because it would sit on top of this, which is not good. So that's the reason why I tell some of you guys, hey, you're going to have to do some head work. All right, so I've got some mock-up retainers. You can see that this is a standard height retainer. This is going to be a plus 100 height retainer. You can see where the locks are a lot lower than where the spring would hit on that one. On the intake side, we are hitting 1810. That should be easy to find for. This guy right here is going to be our issue. So let's see what we got going on here. Then on the exhaust side, we've got, there's a 1700. So 1735 with that particular retainer and lock setup. So a standard retainer, standard lock. I can go change this to a plus 100 retainer. Maybe. So there's 400, 500, 600, 700, 8, 20, 35. So should be easy. I could even use a standard retainer and a plus 50 lock. Let's try that real quick. So our intake was at 1810. Come on, sweetheart. So we've got 500, 600, 700, 775. So we got 775 here. We've got 1810 here. So that's 35 thousandths difference. If I can find a 1750 spring or a 1800 spring, I can get these two to be close enough. So let's take a look at our catalog, spring catalog, and see what we got available to us. Okay, so we're looking at our spring catalogs, and I usually use some comp cam springs or pack springs or Manley springs, PSI springs are usually my go-tos. My first thought was to hit the Comp Cams catalog. So the spring requirements are: one, it has to physically fit the head. The ID has to fit around that step, around the guide. The install heights have to work, and we don't want any coil bind issues or retainer to seal issues. The spring loads have to be adequate for not only the factory cam, but the E303 cam and the cam that I have started to work the specifications for to try out later. Due to a dual spring having an inner spring, that pretty much has knocked us out of any dual springs. As you can see here, the ID of the inner spring, we don't see anything here that's a little bit greater than an inch. So that pretty much limits us to either a single spring or a beehive spring. So looking at this chart, we're looking for springs that will physically fit the head. So an ID of around an inch. So this one, the 902, the 906, 903, 970, 984, 942, 990, 972, so on and so forth. We have to look for springs that have the spring loads that we need. Obviously this 902 spring right here, 48 pounds a seat, not gonna cut it. So we're looking for spring loads. We're looking for something that's at least 125 pounds on the seat. This 972 spring, at first glance, looks like it may be the winner. So the ID is an inch 060, so it'll physically fit around that step on the head. Seat load is about 125 pounds. It's good for 550 lift. But the clincher is that would work just fine on the intake side of our head, but it's not going to work on the exhaust side. So the most install height that we could get with a 50 thousandths lock was a 1775. I really don't want to get into titanium retainers with plus 100 install heights or anything like that. So this would work for the intake side, but it really just doesn't work good for the exhaust side, and is a little light on the spring loads as well. So we go to our Manley catalog, and this page is about the only thing that's going to work for us. The subsequent pages are Next Tech series with a lot more spring load than what we're looking for. But we're looking for springs again that will physically fit the head. We need an ID of around an inch. This dude right here is the only spring that is close to what we need, but it's just going to be too big on the outside diameter. An inch 550 spring will not fit the cylinder head. So we go to pack. Inclination was to look for a beehive spring. This very first spring, this 1211X, the bottom end ID is an inch 030, so we'd have a little bit of clearance around our step. It physically fits the head. It will work with our spring loads, so if we install this spring at an inch 775, we're going to be just a little under 140 pound seat, and about 330 pounds over the nose. So nothing outrageous there. We're still working with our factory rockers. Plenty of coil bind clearance. I do have one of these retainers in the shop to look at our retainer to seal clearance, and we're in good shape there. So I think that this is going to be a winner, and I'll get a set of these 1211 springs ordered and a set of the R310 retainers ordered. and locks to match. Alright guys, that's going to wrap it up for today. Hope you guys are having a good weekend. Thanks for sticking with me on this weekend's videos, and we'll have more to come on this 302 5-liter build, as well as our 363 and our tunnel port and some other engines we have going on. Y'all take care. Talk to you soon. One more thing that I forgot to mention, hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss out on any of these videos. I'll also have some swag available, and even some new swag with Project Triple J on the shirts and on the hats and that sort of thing. So if you want to help the channel out and support this dyno mule, that would be a good way to do it. Y'all take care.